Fair enough. Well, welcome to the Technically Wrong podcast, episode 13. And I suppose we'll start off by talking about the Devil 13, which is actually the RX 480 Red Devil. I don't
Nice
know.
segue.
Huh?
Nice segue.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not too bad until you ruined it. But yeah, it's actually the Red Devil. I don't know whether it was the listing on Overclockers. I think when it first listed, it was Devil 13. I'm not 100% sure. Or maybe it was the initial rumors, or maybe I'm just going mad. But yeah, I did think that was a bit confusing. It calling it the Devil 13. So I don't know. Anyway, I was considering buying one of those Red Devils until I saw the card fully. And well, the logo on the kind of thinner side where the power connector is and everything, that kind of the side that you see in your case, is upside down. I don't really understand why companies don't understand that 99% of people have their computers and their graphics cards orientated in a way that that logo would be upside down. I'm sure it could work in like an inverted ATX or just an inverted case or something like that. But then why would you put so much effort in the backplate? The backplate for this Devil 13, fuck me, Red Devil, right, has a pentagram, a bloody garish, great big pentagram. Yeah, it's the Red Devil and everything, but it has a pentagram on the backplate, right? But it has a giant rectangular hole roughly in the middle of the pentagram in the backplate. But it's not perfectly in the center of the pentagram, or even just it could be like lower or higher up in the pentagram. But it's just not centered whatsoever in the pentagram. It's just this big hole in the backplate, and that really annoyed me. And just has like yellow and blue fan wires, so even when you had it like sitting up in a case, so the logo's upside down, you can't even see the backplate at that point, but you'd see the fans. That kind of detracts from it. And also green PCB parts, which is just inexcusable. It looks horrendously bad. Like, why would you have green PCB parts in this? And even like the like heat pads and stuff, they're bright green and just really awful looking. And that may just be like the review samples because it won't really affect the performance at all. It's just aesthetic cues that they could fix. But if you're going to send it to reviewers, they're obviously going to take big glamour shots for their websites, and they're going to do nice shots in their videos and stuff like that. And it just it puts people like me, nitpicky assholes, off buying your graphics card, and it really put me off because overall, it's one of the coolest and quietest RX 480s. Just it's amazing. Like the temperatures are fantastic. It's got some decent overclocking headroom, and it's very quiet, but I can't get behind it because of all those little things. And so instead of getting that, I ended up ordering an RX 480 Nitro Plus OC. Don't know why they couldn't have just called it the RX 480 Nitro Plus and then have the non OC edition as the non Plus edition, because that would just shorten things. But it's a Nitro Plus OC, and the reason I got it instead of the non OC is I'll put it in terms of like EVGA. They have something like a super clocked with like 25 megahertz more. It has like the reference PCB with a kind of reference style blower cooler that's like plasticky. It's cheap. It's easy to get hold of. It's just a cheaper version of like the reference usually. And then you have something like the super clocked, usually still reference PCB, but with a custom cooler, 25 megahertz more, whatever. And they have like the For the Win edition with like a back plate. It either has a reference or a custom PCB, maybe with the custom cooler, same one from super clocked or something like that. Then you got the classified with a different custom cooler with like an extra heat pipe, and it's got a back plate and a different custom PCB with an extra 6 pin. Then you got the Kingpin with like four extra 8 pins and a back plate with neon lights that shoot lasers into your eyes to release the endorphins to make you forget how much you paid for the graphics card for an extra 50 megahertz. And then, of course, you can't forget the classified Kingpin For the Win. A super go fuck yourself, give us your money clock card with the whole 5 more megahertz with a built-in fucking LN2 loop, and it just cost 10 grand or something. I mean, seriously, EVGA have way too many of these GPUs. They must like oversaturate their own market. But the main point is the Nitro Plus is just a small card with decent fans It's got the best overclocking chip just out of the box, out of any custom cooler. I swear Sapphire, being the OEM for AMD, must cherry pick from AMD like the best chips, because even the Red Devil doesn't have as high of an overclock, even though it's a triple fan, big, beefy heatsink. Like, that card is about as big as my 7990. It's insanely huge. And even the Asus Strix has a lower clock speed out of the box than the Nitro Plus. But yeah, so I bought the OC version instead of the non-OC version because hopefully it will give me a little bit more headroom. Say the non-OC gets to 1342, but the OC version is 1342 out of the box, so I should be able to get it a little further than that. Pretty simple. I just kind of wanted to go on a rant about how EVGA's R&D department must just want to kill themselves. I don't know how they make any money. There's so many EVGA cards for every single GPU that comes out. It's insane. Seriously.
Yeah, they really are. Like, I've said it before. Part of me wishes they made cards for AMD, but I don't even like I don't understand the obsession with making that many cards. I mean, don't get me wrong. Maybe 2 cards for each one, because I understand that some people just want some people can't afford like the ridiculously overclocking parts you put in there, and they just want like a reference board with some like a custom cooler on it. And maybe you offer like a more powered up version, but for the overclockers out there. But I mean, really 5? And like considering that everybody else is doing the cards as well, like how many? I don't know how many of those they would sell.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, I'm pretty sure they might. I don't know. I don't know if they've gotten, because with the 1080 and stuff like that. I haven't looked into it too much, but I know they had like at least 4. And like the Kingpin's probably coming at some point, but they have like the kind of reference board, custom cooler, custom board, custom cooler, then they're classified, and then Kingpin's probably coming at some point. The Kingpin will probably come a week before the 1080 Ti comes out, so people will buy it and then wonder why they didn't just get a 1080 Ti, because that's always how it happens. There's no generation that the Kingpin hasn't come out 1 to 2 weeks before the faster version just is faster. It's so dumb. But yeah, so I just there's so many versions, and like everybody else, like Asus, they usually have their like Strix version, and then they have their ROG version. MSI usually just have the same cooler on a custom PCB or not a reference PCB, 2 variants of the card, and EVGA do at least 4 to 5 variants of their GPU every generation, and it just blows my mind. How many bloody versions that you make. But I also kind of wanted to talk about the irony of buying the Nitro Plus OC, because one of its main new selling features is the fact that it has these double ball bearing brushless super duper amazing fans that are supposedly supposed to last like 3 or 4 or whatever. Like they're supposed to last the like lifespan of this GPU until it doesn't even its minimum requirement for like a shit game. Essentially, like it's like 480 like stats or something like I mean GTX 480 stats, but yeah, it's supposed to last like a million years or whatever. And then they kind of in the marketing derailed that point by saying that when the fans fail, you can RMA them, so you can just take a screw off, stick the fan in a bag, and send it to them, then screw it back in, and you got a new fan. Which I kind of thought was a weird marketing move, kind of saying these fans are amazing and they'll last like a billion years and they're the greatest fans we've ever made. But if they break, give them to us. And that's a nice sentiment, but in a marketing way, that's a bit peculiar. Like they really pushed the fact that it's just one screw and you could take it off. If it was just one screw and you could take it off, and people like reviewers mentioned it, I'm like, oh, this is cool. But like, it's like I think it's in the reviewer's guide for some people. Like, it's really pushed. So I thought that was like a novel and kind of pointless idea. I figured if you got a 480, are you really going to use it for that long? Because once we've got this technology that can run the games now, just about in like 2 years' time, we're going to have games that are 6 times more powerful. But yeah, so I kind of thought that was a bit odd. And then two of my three fans of my 7990 failed. And I wish I could just unscrew them, send them to Sapphire, and they would give me two new ones because that was terrifying. I was just sitting there playing some Overwatch and I was getting ridiculous FPS lag, and that just doesn't happen because I have a 7990 and this is Overwatch. And I was just, my frames were dropping and dropping, and I managed to get through the game. And I opened up MSI Afterburner, which I hadn't done in a while, probably should have, but I opened up MSI Afterburner, I looked at my temps, and I was like, oh, okay, it's actually on fire. I could make a full fry up on this. It was at 99 degrees. So I looked at my GPU and I'm like, why? Oh, two of the fans aren't working. So I went and I took it apart. I had to use oven mitts to take it out of my computer. I shit you not. I literally had to use oven mitts to take it out of my computer. And I laid it out and I unscrewed everything and I switched the fan dedicated for my second GPU, or at least controlled by, or whatever, the one that was working essentially, that was on my second GPU, and I plugged it into the slot for the first and second fan on my first on GPU one. I was kind of worried. I was like, will it deliver too much power? Is it smart enough not to blow this fan up? Is it the connector's fault? Is the connector busted? Did the circuitry there die or something like that? So there were so many things that could go wrong, but I plugged it in. That fan spun up, and I also took that time to replace the thermal paste for the second time this year. I only did it 3 months ago, and I usually do it every 6 months. I have a kind of cycle with my GPU and my computer in general, where I reinstall Windows and I replace the thermal paste on my GPU every 6 months because my GPU melts and my computer slows down because Windows is terrible and this GPU is old. Um, so I replaced the thermal paste and I play Overwatch at some of the lowest settings, not quite the lowest, in windowed mode because that disables the second GPU most of the time. And then now it's idling. Now it's maxed out at about 70 degrees. The second GPU still gets up to about 80 because it's got no fans on it. Even when it's doing nothing, it sits there idling at 80 because otherwise it would idle at 50. So, yeah, that was terrifying. And I still have to wait 2 fucking weeks, ETA at least, from overclockers because for all of their 480s custom cards, they are estimating that they will arrive to them on the fucking 12th of August. For the past like 2 weeks, like they were saying, oh, it's going to come on the 19th or the 20th or the 24th or the 26th, 28th, definitely 29th, 150% on the 30th. It's definitely coming today. Nope, they're still not out, and I don't know whether that's just I don't know whether that's just a kind of they're stalling it to get more stock so they can actually give it to everybody that's pre-ordered, whether they took too many, or whether Sapphire's hogging all the good ones, all the good GPUs or something. But still, the Sapphire version is taking ages. So I don't know if AMD just simply made too many reference versions and didn't make enough GPUs for the custom variants. Because they did have a hell of a lot of reference versions. So yeah, Scan is still saying that it's back ordered like a couple days. Overclockers say, fuck it, just put 12th of August and that'll hopefully be around right. And other websites are saying tomorrow, other websites are saying 4 weeks from now, other websites are saying no more pre-orders, and it's a bit of a nightmare, but I need that GPU.
Your GPU is a double GPU, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 7990. It's two 7970s or two ATXs.
Do you have the option to turn the crossfire off?
It's on board. It's on board with a chip. That chip makes it so crossfire is always on.
Can you? I
Disable
mean,
it in the drivers? No, I can't.
could could
I
could you
tried
just
that.
underclock the GPU?
I did that for the. I've got it running at 888 instead of 950 boost clock to 1000. I've got it at just plain 888 because 888 is a nice number. But I have done that. I've been doing that for the last year or so, and it
Oh,
still after a while gets up to 90 degrees. It creeps. It under full load, the GPU will usually be around 80 degrees when I replace the thermal paste. And then when the thermal paste starts to disintegrate, and some people don't believe me when I say that, but I've got pictures like I'm using Arctic Silver, the good shit, right? I'm using some decent fucking thermal paste, but I've got some pictures, and I might post them on Twitter or something of the like it's oily and it's hard and it's just separated. It has separated the thermal paste. That's how bad it gets because after a while it gets up to 90 degrees instead of 80. So that's on the max load, which I usually do because I like my games to look pretty if I have such a powerful GPU. But with Overwatch at the moment, it's underclocked to 888, which is about about 100 megahertz lower, and that greatly decreased the temperatures because before that it was getting up to 95 when the thermal paste was dying. Also, in MSI, it's quite difficult to underclock it any further, and surprisingly, I don't know, maybe it's. But I start to get stability issues if I get it any lower than around 850, and I found 800 and about 80 was the sweet spot, so I just stuck 8 on because numbers, they're nice. But yeah, that was weird because yeah, I did. I genuinely started getting stability issues when I underclocked it so much. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know because it's been a bit of a nightmare. But it was great for the first year, and then after that, it was starting to get a bit shaky. And since like it's been due to upgrade for a long time now. But those fans that I took off were almost hotter than the actual card itself. And I guess that's because they're kind of sandwiched against the heatsink and stuff like that. But they had burnt out because I mean even the well, it would be keeping the second GPU cooler, but the other fan was quite cool. And they felt like they burnt out. There wasn't any smell or anything. They just plain stopped working. So yeah, I don't know. I could probably do because on eBay you can buy 79.90 fans for about 15 quid, and I could buy the two in a row and then stick it in and get this thing up and running. But I've ordered my 480, and I may get this thing up and running again for like a system at some point. It's gonna sit in a room somewhere, maybe in quiet or cool, maybe ITX system with one of these in it. And if it's going to sit in like a living room under a thing or something, it wouldn't really matter how loud it is. It's not directly next to me, so that's not too bad. But yeah, for now, I'm just going to get my 480 and mount this on a wall somewhere because it's still a pretty card. Anyway, I can't remember what I was talking about.
what were you talking about?
Well, anyway, the GTX 970 bullshit is resolved.
Oh, really?
Um, Yeah, well, you know how they advertised it as a 4 gigabyte card and it
Yeah.
turned out to be like 3.5 with 512 megabytes being super duper slow. They, I didn't actually realize this. I just thought it was like the 4 to 3.5, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I thought, ha, fuck you, Nvidia, you're assholes. But they actually advertised it as 64 ROPS, and it turned out to be 56. They also advertised it with 2 megabytes of L2 cache, and it had 1.75. So they just lied about almost every single specification other than the CUDA core because they always lie about the boost clocks because the boost clocks are all over the place. They could be faster, they could be slower. Nvidia's GPU boost is just like insane. It's just yeah, it's a little bit of a nightmare trying to control it, especially with the newer versions of GPU boost where it just takes all the control away from you. But anyway, I mean, that is a good and a bad thing, and you can get different BIOSes and stuff like that, and different software will work better. But the point is, they pretty much lied about everything in the 970, and they had to pay all of the fees for the entire trial and everything to do with it. Absolutely everything, like all the lawyers' fees, just the lawsuit costs in the first place. And if you live in the US and you own a 970, you may have to go on like a weird backwards forum or the 970 under support, under specifications, under drivers, in drivers, download a specific driver, then go to a little pop-up ad menu and then go through a petition to get your $30. But they owe you $30. Don't know how it's going to be settled. Don't know how people are going to claim that. Like I said, Nvidia are probably going to try and cover it up as much as possible. But yeah, if you own a 970, I'm pretty sure you can't just buy one now and then get $30 off. But if you've owned a 970 for a while, and previous to this lawsuit probably dropping, or settling at least, then they owe you $30.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, because Nvidia at the time, and the reason it doesn't hold up is because at the time when this broke, and everybody was like, "Oh well, what's the point? What's the point buying a 970?" And it's still a decent graphics card. I mean, we're seeing like 480s at the beginning performing just as well, and the overclock versions. Listen, I know I ragged on about EVGA for adding 25 megahertz per iteration of the GPU, but for the 480, 25 megahertz goes a long, long way. That's like 3 to 4 FPS in some games. Like with AMD GPUs in the first place, with NVIDIA GPUs, like 100 megahertz is worth 10 on AMD. Seriously. With NVIDIA, you could overclock a card 400 megahertz. With AMD, you could overclock it 50, but you'd see the same sort of performance gains. Um, so yeah, with what they were talking about the with the 970 was that their marketing department and their engineering department didn't communicate properly, which doesn't really make any sense. Were the engineering department aiming for 64 ROPS and 4 gigabytes of RAM and then failed to deliver that? Or did the marketing department make it up? Like, how does that even happen? Seriously. And also, you check this stuff. You're a giant, giant company making graphics. You are the biggest company making graphics cards. And one of the biggest making CPUs, for fuck's sake, with your Tegras and shit, right? You're the biggest bloody company, okay? And you don't check this stuff twice, 3 times, 4 times. It seems to me like Nvidia do definitely rush things out, and they've been rushing things out and just throwing it at the market just because they can, and they don't really care what happens because they're gonna make money either way. It's a very Apple approach of doing things, really. Um, but at least Apple have like the build quality first or whatever, and their internals are shit. But whatever. But they just throw things out into the market and just see if it hits or misses. And even with the 1060, like there's no way that graphics card would have come out as fast as it did if the 480 didn't. And it seems a little rushed, especially with the rumors behind the scenes about the 3 gigabyte models with the slightly lower clocks and stuff. And there's no rumors anymore about that even existing. It was just kind of when this 1060 was coming out. I don't know if that was an engineering sample. I don't know if that's what they were planning to release before they re-engineered it into the 1060 we know now, or whether that variant's coming out later, or what. Because they're all of this stuff just seems very rushed and very kind of careless in a way, especially with just releasing the Titan X Pascal edition. Just what, like it's supposed to be unveiled tomorrow? Like seriously, like are you kidding me? Like you just released your 1080 and your 1060 and then a Titan, and then are you going to release a Ti, and then there's rumors about the HBM version, and why? What are you doing? as well as AMD with their they're taking their time. They're really taking their time. And they thought about the future. They really thought about the future because the 480 is vastly better optimized for asynchronous compute. And that's what all of the modern APIs like Vulkan and DirectX 12 are using heavily now. And when you look at the performance of the 480 versus the 1060 in those APIs, the 480 destroys the 1060. There is zero competition there. The 1060 rules in being outdated. The 480 is the future. And it is also the future because you can stick another one in and not worry about it. Whereas, 1060 you can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep saying this, but it's a shame that you can't with 1060. That was always like the best part of owning like a 60 series Nvidia card was the fact that you could next generation shove another one in and you'd be able to go, you know, especially for because of how cheap they are the second generation around. But yeah, I mean, I've been reading up about that. I've been reading that AMD's been doing really well in the new APIs, and I'm not really surprised. They've been talking about doing stuff with this kind of asynchronous compute like for a while, and they tried it on their APUs with Kavari a little bit. So I'm not surprised we're seeing that. I think we'll probably see that from NVIDIA next generation.
Yeah, but again, it's next generation. If the Titan isn't,
At this rate, next generation will be next week.
oh, I know,
With the
yeah,
way they're rushing things
that
out.
it's insane. Like, guys, okay, look, calm the fuck down. We're getting to a point where Intel are going for 10 nanometers, and we're getting to a point where graphics cards are coming out so fast that if you buy one now, you're dumb, and you just never buy a graphics card ever again because you're dumb. It's like, oh, I bought the most powerful thing. Oh no, next week. Or I bought the mid-range thing. Oh no, it's a piece of shit now. Like, it's insane. The speed that we're going, we're gonna hit like the 5 nanometer just dead zone in like a couple of years. It's insane. What is going? Why Intel? Look, you know that AMD are going to come out with something that's going to compete directly with you. So why not stay on this manufacturing process, okay, and just make it better, like Nvidia, like the 28 nanometer race of AMD and Nvidia, right? They stuck with it for so long and they improved it to a point where it was amazing that you could do this on 28 nanometer. And now we're jumping headfirst into half of that, and we're going at a rate that is just like 3 times faster than we did back then. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense to me because what are we going to do when we get down to like 8 nanometers, which is like the lowest possible manufacturing process that we have viable today? And then past that, if you're going to 10, then you better be going to 9 and then 8.5 or something, like 8. And then, like, is it just going to be 8 for the next couple of years until we can get down to 7 or 6 or theoretically even 5? It's ridiculous. And what are we going to do when we get down to 5? It's going to be producing so much heat. And we're going so quickly down the rabbit hole. I don't know what we're supposed to predict for the future. Like, quantum computers and stuff like that is not going to be there for a long time, and the hybrids and all that stuff, they're theoretical at this point. They're not viable. Are we just going to get to a point where, well, video game graphics just kind of have to get more optimized, or GPUs are like an FPS faster each year on the same manufacturing process? Are we going to get to a point where everything is the same for a couple of years before we can do anything?
That's true. And maybe that'll be the case, but I know, like, there are companies like Intel working on alternative technologies to silicon, alternative processes to be used on CPUs and compute devices. and they've been in the works for a few years now. You know, if we spend a few more years getting down to 8 nanometers, by the time that comes around, that the thing will have had almost like, you know, almost 10 years um, in development. So we could be seeing like a completely new, maybe not quantum computing, maybe not something entirely new, but like a completely new way of doing something we already have. Like maybe we just start making
Well,
CPUs with a completely different materials.
because you kind of have to. Because if we do stay stagnant for a few years and then we make the jump to quantum computers, that's just going to be. That's either going to be like inventing electricity or a catastrophe. It's going to be one of the two. It's going to be a complete revolution, an entire new generation of just computers that are, well, faster than humans at that point, or it's going to be everything is broken. So it's just everything. It's like a space race at this point. Who can get down lower? Who can get things faster to a point where, oh, we made it to space. What now? Nothing.
Yeah, and we say that, but do you know Intel's plans?
What their alternative material stuff?
Yeah, because
I
they're
don't know.
I believe, like, assuming the everything is still as it was, because I haven't seen their roadmap recently, but you know I read it about 6 8 months ago. So assuming it hasn't
Right.
changed in that time, um, I believe I'm right in saying that they're going to 7 nanometers on the CPUs, and and then will not go any further than that.
Oh yeah,
And
that's what I thought. Yeah.
they intend to ditch silicon completely after 7 nanometers, and because they have a supposedly new technology, a new a new manufacturing process, new manufacturing materials that they intend to use in replacement of silicon that can go much slower than 7 nanometers.
But how much? I mean,
They intend to do 5 nanometers by 2020.
yeah, but that is a theoretical bottom for really anything
But
that's
I
not.
don't know they intend to do it on silicon.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
because at
gonna
that point, again, you'd have to have liquid fucking nitrogen. It would be 5 nanometers is just this so close together that I think it was damn it, I think it was. Is it the electrons are just shifting from one to the other? Like there's blur or something. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look up on that. I'm fascinated by all this stuff, but you know when you sit there and you binge watch like quantum computer videos or like nanometer videos for like 6.5 hours, and then you come out of it like, well, that was all a big blur, and I can't really remember any of it. That's what I did last week. Because I watched an episode of Scorpion, of season two, and they had a quantum computer which was just a big glass box that looked like a fucking containment field for the Tesseract. It seriously was just a little cube in a bigger cube with some lasers. It looked like they were experimenting on energon cubes, or it was not a quantum computer. Let's put it that way. And then I was going into like I was looking into like programming quantum computers and the kind of algorithms that we could get out of it and decoding all the quantum computers and the states, and you know I was looking into all that stuff and I was researching all about quantum computers and stuff, and then I came out of it like I didn't even answer the question that I wanted to answer when I went into this stuff. I'm just more confused now. Like I know a lot more, but I'm unsure of a hell of a lot more because I learned that I was completely wrong. If you know what I mean. So yeah, I don't know, but 5 nanometers is because at least on silicon, I know that that's the bottom. You just can't go any further than that. And with other materials, maybe, but that is like just that's one of the lowest possible points you could get to in computer manufacturing. So
I think what we'll see is we'll see the I think before we see new technology kind of take the mainstream, maybe we'll see it in like you know Xeon high end Xeons, or
Right,
maybe
right.
maybe we'll see it in like enthusiast parts early
And
bursts.
hell, maybe if this stuff is because well, it would be a different material, so it wouldn't necessarily be faster in the first place. But maybe with this kind of technology, they would do something like 10 nanometers again, and then 7, and then go. Because if it's cooler, then you could overclock it faster and get faster CPUs or something like that.
Well, Intel's goal for the last couple of years and going forward will be most certainly their goal is less about wanting clock speeds because they don't really care about clock speeds anymore. They care about efficiency and temperatures. And so if they reach a 7 to 5 nanometer process where they're stopping for a little while they wait for the new technology to come through to the mainstream, if they're stopping there and they're making the chips more efficient every generation, we could be seeing, as opposed to just faster cores, we could well be seeing like just them adding more cores each generation, and to keep the market going.
Yeah, with more efficiency and stuff like that. Well,
Yeah,
speaking of that, there are rumors going around that the next generation, I think it is either Skylake or is it Kaveri Lake? Is that the next one?
Kirby Lake, is it?
I think it's Kaveri or Curvy or something like that. And then Cannon Lake is the 10 nanometer, or maybe Kaveri is 10 now, because whatever. There's the generation, but they're talking about a mainstream i7 6 core, which is, well, what we've been theorizing
Yeah,
for a while.
pretty much what we've been saying for a while.
Yeah, because i7s have been pretty fucking stagnant for a long time. And again, I mean, we had the debate about would 6 cores in games like affect anything, but then again, if 6 cores are on the mainstream and they're getting there, would games then utilize more cores, stuff like that. So that'll just be fun to tinker around with, and to have in the first place a 6 core on the desktop platform, just
Yeah,
consumer base. Yeah,
and it's KB Lake.
yeah. I think because Kaveri's fucking AMD, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it would be nice. i7s haven't really. I mean, other than the fact you gain hyperthreading, woo, hyperthreading. No one cares. Um, Not really. Um, like there isn't a real distinguishing fact between the two, and it'd be really nice to see some 6 cores in the i7. Yeah, maybe not all i7s, maybe just like the high-end i7s. But I think that'd be good because I think we're going to start to see 6 core enthusiast parts become a thing of the past. I think we're going to just be
Eight
seeing
cores,
eight,
10
eight and
cores.
tens. Yeah, maybe maybe 2 generations time we'll see 12. I mean, we're certainly
Yeah.
seeing the Xeon parts to match. So, and ultimately, enthusiast parts are almost always like broken down Xeons anyway.
Oh yeah, that's why the 6950X is so expensive, because they would cannibalize the Xeons otherwise. But yeah, it'd be nice to see like because beforehand you'd have like a 4 core that was slightly higher clocked or slightly faster, and it'd be just about as fast as the new generation 4 core. I think with the 4820K, we had a 4 core that was as fast as 77 as the 4770K. So you might see like when the 6 core mainstream parts come out, an enthusiast 6 core as well on the cheaper end. So you could buy that for around the same price and still have the X99 or 11, 11, 11 9, 119 platform, whatever it is.
They need like better naming schemes for like chips, like because they're at this point they're all just like amalgamation of numbers and they don't really make any sense.
Yeah. So when you see the next enthusiast platform, you might see like a 6 core, even though there is a 6 core on the mainstream, just so you could have that platform to do stuff on, which would be interesting. But after that, like we got the 8 cores, and then the 6 cores were the bottom ones. So then the next generation you'll see 8 cores and 10 cores, usually anyway. So that'll be interesting. As we say about just about everything that's in the future, that'll be interesting. But yeah, oh yeah, we never really finished the 480. I was going to talk about the because the performance of the 480 in Vulkan is like, well, it's like 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 15 FPS rather, faster than the 1060 in a lot of games. Like in Doom, you can see upwards of like 20 frames per second at very extreme case, like for like brief seconds. But still, you can see like upwards of like it's about 15% or so faster than the 1060 in like Vulkan and stuff like that. And that Doom is like the best possible example for this stuff at the moment because it's one of the only ones running Vulkan. And of course, Vulkan is essentially just Mantle with a few little tweaks. But yeah, so it destroys the 1060 in even in DirectX 12, and it's supposedly a less powerful card. And it's because of asynchronous compute and just all of the other technologies in the 480 and just the way it's made. It's made for the future. And so, like, if you're the kind of guy who's just going to play GTA 5 for the next 3.5 years, sure, buy a 1060, you'll get an extra 5 FPS in GTA 5. Good for you. But if you buy a new game within the next 3 years, it's most likely going to be DirectX 12 or Vulkan. More and more games, like next year, there'll be double the amount of games using DirectX 12 and Vulkan. And the next year, there'll be double that. And it will just increase until pretty much every game on the market is DirectX 12 or Vulkan. Hopefully Vulkan, because it is just the superior one. It's not quite the superior one currently, because we need a bit more NVIDIA support, but we're not getting enough NVIDIA support because not enough games are running Vulkan. It's a shame, but it's kind of the way things go, I suppose. But hopefully Vulkan for the future, because it's better. And I mean, it's cooler as well. You know, it'll hopefully make your graphics cards live long and prosper. Anyway, or at least the
Wow.
frame rates. So yeah, no, DirectX 12's all right, but it's Microsoft, and we need to get rid of Microsoft at some point. Anyway, so yeah, if you just for the future, like, it's a cheap graphics card that in the next coming years will get faster. It's a cheap budget graphics card that next year will be faster than it is now because of game support. That's ridiculous. Whereas the 1060 is most likely just going to stay the same, really. With 1060 driver implementations, you can get a few FPS, but with the new APIs, like driver implementations for like specific games and stuff, will boost the FPS incredibly if you have optimized for those APIs. It's actually a graphics card that is cheaper than a 1060, that will vastly outperform the 1060 in newer games, and will continue to get faster. It's incredible. And I also kind of wanted to clear up, like, we don't really talk about Nvidia that much. Like, you know, I made the joke like, oh, the 1080, what are AMD going to do? And we bash on AMD, right? But we're AMD guys, right? Nvidia, I really don't like Nvidia very much. I appreciate they make decent graphics cards, but currently with their 1060, I don't think it's that great. I really don't. I was a little worried for a little bit, especially with the overclocking and stuff like that, but even the fastest overclocked 1060 is still behind a 480 in modern APIs. And with Vulkan and with proper NVIDIA support, we may see the 1060 gain some traction in modern APIs and maybe even in the future be just as fast. But the 480 is simply just better optimized for these APIs and therefore is going to be faster, even if it is a slower card. So with especially with me buying a 480, there's going to be more and more 480 news and stuff like that. But overall, I've I used to be an Nvidia guy. I had a crappy AMD graphics card, a 4850. It was a nightmare. Crappy AMD CPU. So when I wanted to build my new computer, I bought Intel, and I had a 660, and I had a 670 after that. Well, the 670 was a hand me down from a friend who, well, actually, a 670 was a hand me down from a friend because I convinced him to buy an R9 290, but that's not the point. But yeah, no, I used Nvidia for a while, and I like Shadowplay. Their software's fantastic, and they just work. But I feel like Nvidia just turning into the Apple of the world, and that's why I want AMD to come through with their GPUs and their CPUs, because Nvidia and Intel are just being arseholes. They're just throwing things out in the market, and they don't give a shit. And sure, if Intel using the ridiculous overpriced 10-core CPU to fund new research into under 7 nanometer processors and different materials, that's fantastic. But we kind of need someone else to also do that, because otherwise, then Intel will have a monopoly when it gets to that point. So we need a different person to shake them up a little bit. So yeah, 1060. Yeah, there's a bunch of variants out. It's a decent card. It's overclocks like a nut job and whatever. But I'm an AMD guy, and you know I'm gonna talk about the AMD stuff most of the time.
Yeah, I don't like AMD. Sorry, I don't like Nvidia or as a company. I don't mind Intel as a company. Like they've become much better over recent years, especially like they've made a really good push over the last year, last 2 years. They've done a lot of good stuff. They're becoming much better.
Yeah.
They're becoming very conscious about their place in the world, which I like. Yeah, recently you'll see there's videos everywhere currently about the fact that they finally made all of their manufacturing stuff. Like
Yes, they sent out that box of dirt to people.
yeah, they just made it conflict free, which is
Fantastic.
something which I don't believe AMD is currently managing.
Well, I mean, you can't really blame them for that. They are struggling at the moment.
No, but it's just one of those things. I mean, yeah, as Intel over the last couple of years have been making strides, and it's just another one of those. They are becoming a
Yeah.
much better company.
I mean, hopefully, if AMD become like, successful again and they don't become conflict free, I will call them out on that shit. Like, fuck you guys. What the fuck? Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Intel are becoming a better company. They're still lazy. Like, I mean, the generational improvements on their CPUs are becoming less and less each generation. And the only real exciting stuff we're seeing each generation currently is like better laptop parts, because stuff's becoming more efficient, so you can put better stuff in a laptop. Other than that, it's been pretty boring the last couple of generations, and so there isn't really
But
anything
again,
happening.
even
But
with Intel and doing all that stuff, really and truly, we're getting to a point where CPUs, at least on the desktop space, like Xeons are still getting more and more cores, and that's kind of what you need. But on the desktop space, yeah, 4 cores is kind of enough. But if they were to make them faster, and if they were to make 6 cores, and just faster in general, then we would be getting faster games. And of course, Nvidia are joking around in their headquarters, possibly a rumor, but whatever, that the Intel CPUs just aren't fast enough. So they may become a bottleneck at some point. Who knows? But so far, like, it's not too egregious, you know? Like, they are definitely making strides to become better. We would like a bit more performance, but that's because we're the enthusiast, and really and truly, it's good enough. It's just a bit expensive, that's all.
yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, there's not much to really say about that. It's perfectly fine for a great deal of people. I mean, we are just looking at it from a very enthusiast standpoint, but it's fine.
One thing I wanted to mention about Nvidia are the rumors that the NX may be running Tegra. Now, the current dev kits are rumored to have Tegra 1 chips in them, But that's quite an old chip. That's like a year and a half to 2 years old at this point, and I think it's in your Shield tablet, right? The Tegra one.
Yeah, the Tegra
Yeah.
one is still like a very. It's interesting because actually, like the Tegra one, is still graphically still performs as well as like an iPad. Yeah, the modern iPad you can buy today. And like devices of that spec, devices which cost almost 4 times as much.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and like, because graphically, I mean, it's got what, like 200 Kepler CUDA cores in there or something stupid like that. Like, it's awesome. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, single core ARM performance in it is a bit awful. Multi core's all right, but the graphical performance is absolutely amazing.
yeah. Well, there now. What I was thinking was that they are Nvidia have kind of kept it relatively under wraps, but they have the Tegra 2, right? So they have the Tegra 2, and I think that's supposed to go in Tesla cars or something like that. I think like a new Model S, or maybe I fucking love Tesla by the way, but new Model S, or maybe I think possibly the Model 3, although it might be a bit expensive to stick in such a cheap car. Fantastic fucking car. But anyway, Tesla are great. Um Elon Musk is my hero. Um so yeah, so they have something like they may have like a Tegra 2 or something like that. So I but that seems to be like with the CPU, they're putting it in like I think like supercomputers or something like that, like Tegra 2s, they're clusters or whatever, and the GPUs are ridiculous and all that stuff. But with what people are saying is that the Tegra 1 would have less performance than a Wii U overall. And well, Nintendo have outright said that the NX isn't supposed to replace the Wii U necessarily. It's supposed to be kind of a different thing. So I don't know. So the Tegra one would kind of make sense, but it's such an old chip, and for development purposes and just all of this kind of stuff, it's a bit odd. Then again, the Tegra 2 would definitely need a heatsink, but like a Tegra 1.5 or like just a different like custom made Tegra chip for this console, because I mean AMD have done that for years. You know, they made custom made APUs for the PS3 and Xbox yeah, well, I mean the PS4 and Xbox One, and they're making custom-made parts for at least Scorpio. We know that for sure because in their recent like "We Did Well" thing, they released like Scorpion was an engineering success. So they've made custom parts for all of these things. So if Nvidia would do the same for say Nintendo, and they would make a kind of Tegra like 1.5 or like something like that, and beef it up to be as performance as good at performing as a Wii U or something like that. Because well, it's gonna run stuff like the new Zelda game that's confirmed for NX, and it's supposed to be like a tablet. So style thing. It's supposed to be like a tablet. Say like the Nvidia Shield with the gamepad things, with the kind of PS Move looking things on the side.
I don't.
I think. Oh no, that might be. Yeah, no, I think Razer made. I think Razer made a controller for it. Maybe it's an Nvidia part, but there was like a controller for the Shield that had like two gamepads on the side, and I think the NX is going to be similar, but with the gamepads being able to be removed, and then you can plug it into the TV and use it as a console. So it's also supposedly cartridge based, and the capacity for these cartridges is 32 gigabytes, which people are saying is very low, but that's about the capacity. It's greater than the capacity of a Blu-ray, isn't it? I think a Blu-ray is like 24 gigabytes. Do you know how much a Blu-ray is?
Not off the top of my head.
All right, well, it's around the same as a Blu-ray disc or something along those lines. But yeah, so it's gonna have like decent storage capacity, which probably means that the cartridge is gonna be ludicrously expensive. But oh well. But it seems to be. I don't know if it's like the new. Because it can't really be the new 3DS because it's a giant fucking tablet. Like, you'd have to have like a backpack or something to carry this thing around. I don't know what it's gonna do. I don't know if Nintendo. Just seems a bit odd to me. And It's nice that they're trying new things again, but it seems like they've just made the Wii U pad a console. You know?
Yeah, it does. I mean, kind of on that note, I would absolutely love to see a Tegra 2, because if if they released another Shield with like a better improved Tegra, much better CPU, even if it's a similar graphics performance, like I'd be all about buying that. So I'd love to see another Tegra chip re-released. The first one did really well. It was very much an underrated chip. It was very cheap, like an extremely cheap chip, and it was just performed so well. It still performs so well. It's like 2 years old.
Yeah, it had a large screen with a solid controller built. I don't know if that was like press release. Because I saw it at I saw it at like Computex a couple of years ago, or CES or something. There was a video about these two little controllers on the side, and there are images of it online, but I can't really track it down. But yeah, so similar to something like that, if you. But yeah, definitely the NX will be an interesting console, as have been Nintendo's consoles for ages. So we'll see if it's a hit or a miss, but so far it kind of looks like a miss to me. I mean, I'd want one just for interest and to support Nintendo because I don't want them to disappear, but I don't want to see another console like an Xbox One or a PS4 or a Scorpio or a Neo or any of that stuff, but I just don't know if they hit it on the head with this. It's a bit peculiar, especially if it's not supposed to replace the Wii U and the Wii U is still struggling, and then you add this into the equation, which is almost as powerful, that can run the same games, and it's not supposed to replace it, but then be mobile and also a console that you can plug into your TV. It's a weird concept, and I don't really get where they're going.
What they need to do is they just need to sell the console, and make sure it's got Super Smash Bros, Pokemon, and Legend of Zelda, and they'll
And
sell a
Animal
billion
Crossing,
copies.
and the
And
new
Animal
Mario
Crossing.
game, and make a Metroid game for it, and it's
That's
done.
it. Just
Sold.
yeah, just they'll sell billions of copies. Just billions of
If it
them.
doesn't have Animal Crossing and I'm supposed to be mobile, I'm not buying it. It should have Pokemon Go support. That'll sell the fuck out of it.
You see it like secondhand stores now, like Cash Converters or CEX or like I guess games places that sell secondhand phones. Like they've started like listing them as this phone supports Pokemon Go.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. That's
saw
incredible.
that in Meadow Hall the other day.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's a lot, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, well, you can find me at Alkarius Endgame on Twitter. Not that well, I did actually. I posted at first. I forgot I had Twitter other than saying it on the podcast, and then I tweeted some bullshit or whatever. But yeah, that's about it, really.
You can find me pretty much everywhere: Twitter, Tumblr, and some other nonsense places.
Links are in the description.
They are in the description.
Also, Lucas is never fucking here anymore.